It's the Sunday call-in show from UGAsports.com. Jason Butt is here. I'm Dayne Young in for Paul Maharry, who is at the 11 Alive studios. And if you are watching this live, hang out for a couple more hours. You can see what he does on 11 Alive, their Sports Extra, which I believe happens at 11:30 tonight. I think that's the time.
Yep.
You can find it wherever 11 Alive publishes things, which will be their website. We don't have any limits here. We're not Twitter. So I think as long as you have YouTube operating, you can check out what we're doing here on this YouTube channel and subscribe to us. We enjoy hanging out with you guys on a Sunday night. You want to join us? You know how to do that. It's in the description for the YouTube channel. Jason, I want to start with this because have you attended SEC Media Days before?
Oh, yeah. Multiple ones.
Yeah. I thought that was the case, but after you started covering the Falcons, I didn't even know that wouldn't be something on your radar for them. So this would have been pre-Falcons,
correct,
for your SEC Media Days. I've been to a few as well. All the ones I've been to have been at the Winfrey and in Hoover, Alabama, at the hotel, which I think is just a lovely experience.
Yeah,
it kind of breaks my heart that they send it to Atlanta and Nashville, a game that I always like to play. Who's Georgia going to send? And during COVID, it was only 2 people, but I think we're back to 3 representatives from the team. So I've made my prediction on UGA Sports Live last week. So I'll give that to you in a second. But I'm just curious, who do you think Georgia sends to SEC Media Days to represent the team?
Okay, so I think the first one is a no-brainer. That's Cedric Van Pran, leader of this offense at this point in terms of returning contributors, and the fact that he has a good story in terms of selling the UGA program, which is really what Media Days is about. You want your best guys who can sell the program. Doesn't necessarily have to be a quarterback, and Kirby Smart has played it that way before, where the quarterback doesn't go to Media Days. Cedric Van Pran makes way too much sense. I think you can pencil him in undoubtedly. I think there's a few. The next one, I'm going to go with Brock Bowers. I think you got to send Brock Bowers. I mean, come on. He's a potential Heisman candidate before the season starts. I know he's a tight end, so people might say, "Oh, come on, I don't know if I buy that," but I have to say absolutely with Brock Bowers. And then you're going to send a defender, and I think Jamon Dumas Johnson is the guy on defense that you're probably sending. You could send Kamari Lassiter. I don't know, but he also is just coming off of 1 year as a starter. I guess Jamon is too. Malachi Starks. You could. I just think defense. You got a lot of talent there. I don't know. That's where I am kind of stuck. But I'm gonna go with Dumas Johnson as my defensive representative for Georgia.
We bring in Ben Choppy Bachmann, who this is part of your show. I'm the guest on this particular one. But I am timely. They taught us in journalism school, do you know what time the 6 o'clock news starts? And it's 6 o'clock. So that's how we started the show. And
I was in the wrong StreamYard link, being like, Dane, what is this? It was a black screen for the longest time. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Something's wrong here. There's nobody in here.
All good, my friend. So
I sent you pictures of that just to show you, but
no. Like I'm not hating on your tardiness. I think this is the
no,
experience.
I know.
I'm gonna text Paul later, and he's gonna be like, "This is the experience on the Sunday show." Like it kind of gets off to a sputtering start, and here we are, and I love it. I
gotta go back. I'm an idiot. Javon Bullard is the representative. So Ben, I'm not thinking tonight.
Oh, I'm the sleeper, and this is Chaz Chambliss. Are you kidding me? Absolute sleeper.
No, Javon Bullard. Golly, man. I am.
Well, you also have to have a talker. Like Brock Bowers is an obvious choice, but he's not much of a talker. But I think at this point you have to take him because it's not like he's awful with it. And he's been a part of, he's been your best weapon for both your championship teams. He has to be a media day guy. Van Pran, is he allowed to go again? Or is
why not? Yeah.
So he'll be there. Yeah. Okay, so Van Pran's a given. Then I'll go Bowers, and then on defense, probably Dumas Johnson because he's the leader of the defense in the middle.
That's who I said. That's what I said first.
Those are your 3.
Yeah, I'm switching. I'm flipping to Bullard. Just coming off of all the plays he made in the playoffs and everything.
Ooh,
and the
Dan
MVP.
Jackson also.
I'm somewhere in the middle of you guys because I agree Van Pran will be there. I also think that Javon Bullard will be there because of just the hot end to last season with the interceptions at the prime times. My question is, yes, Bowers is one of the best players in the country. And I assume that if media has any sway, the ESPNs of the world, they're going to have Bowers on that spotlight because he's one of the best players in the game. But Ben, you're right. It's not that he's necessarily bad at media. He has no interest in doing it. It reminds me so much of Nick Chubb, which Jason, you can affirm that like Nick Chubb would show up and he would be kind and he would be polite, but you could tell didn't want to be there, not his thing. And that's cool. And I think Georgia tried to respect that. I don't know if they'll be able to do that with Bowers as much this season because of how good he is. The other thing I wondered, Ladd McConkey has done this a little bit more than Bowers. Does Ladd McConkey want that stage to try to begin boosting up that NFL draft status? Bowers won't need that. Will McConkey want that? Would he? I don't think that players requesting necessarily Kirby's going to make this call and send who he wants to send. But would McConkey be in that mix?
Yeah, he's a senior too, which makes me think last year Nolan Smith was a senior. Stetson was obviously, I mean, if he wasn't a senior, there's a problem. And then you had Van Pran, who was the leader of your offensive line. So you look at it, I think that logically makes sense that they're going to want a lot of guys who have been in the program a really long time. And Ladd's been there. This is his fourth year. And he's going to be, he might be a top 50 draft pick next year. Like he can push for it. Like I saw some highlights of him the other day and was looking at his numbers compared to the rest of the SEC. I'm like, sleeper chance to be like the second highest drafted wide receiver to George Pickens under Kirby, which is kind of surprising. I never would have guessed that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Ladd McConkey might actually be a better pick than Bowers.
Do not think it'll be a quarterback at all.
I don't think so.
I just don't see them taking, which, I mean, is it much of a quarterback controversy right now? It doesn't seem that way. I'm one of the few believers that think Brock Vandagriff's still in this thing, and that's fine. I'm happy to be on that island. I need to see it from Carson Beck before I kind of anoint him to where others have.
Yeah, I agree.
Regardless that he doesn't have experience, you rarely send a quarterback without experience to something like media days.
Especially when you haven't officially named the starter, and Kirby's not going to do that. And so he's not going to send the guy out there without firmly entrenching him, because we can have we can say what we see and what we believe, which is Carson Beck is the more than likely going to open the year as the starter. Although I know Dayne said Brock Vandagriff still has a shot, but at this stage, I think it's pretty fair to say that Carson Beck leads for the spot. But until Kirby Smart says Carson Beck is definitively our starting quarterback, I don't think there's a chance that he ends up going to media days. I think I'm kind of with you. I think Ladd McConkey has a shot, but I just don't see how Georgia can get away with. I mean, I think there will actually be some, you know what, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but I do think there will be some criticism from the folks attending if Brock Bowers isn't there, based on the fact that he is, as you said, Dayne, one of the best players in the entire country. It would just be kind of silly to not have somebody who's going into his third season, probably going to the NFL after that season. It would just be silly not having him there.
Two things. If Jalon Walker was a starter last year, he would be going these next 2 years because of his media presence and what he is. But my other sleeper would be Stackhouse because they always like those big guys going. I remember Jordan Davis was there. Stackhouse is a fourth-year guy. Some of the mock draft projections have him even cracking in the late first round because if he adds to his interior pass rush, he's really good against the run. I mean, he's that guy that maybe they're going to prop up this is our guy along the defensive front because he's another guy in Ladd's, in same situation as Ladd. He's played similar amounts. He's a senior. He's a guy similar draft stock. Do they want to boost him up? Because he's also a guy on social media who does a lot of goofy things on social media. So he's kind of one of those guys that they might want to prop up there.
Media days is a weird thing because for the players and the teams, they come out for maybe half a day. They're there for a total of something like 4 or 5 hours, maybe a little bit longer if they do one of the private meetings with the media that's there for their team. But for the media members that cover all 4 days, I would say it's kind of exciting at first and you get the updates from the commissioner and you kind of get it going. But I don't know, Jason, did you have this thought? And I don't know if you covered all 4 days, but by the second day, it kind of starts to feel like a slog of all right, how do we make this different from yesterday?
Well, I think so. When I covered media days, the first time it was twice when I was in college, And so you're just covering Georgia, and that was literally it. We would do some other stories if there was a Georgia connection, but especially back then, internet was just getting started, like in terms of really ramping that up for news coverage. So didn't really. We tried to make the most of it though. But then when I worked for the Macon Telegraph, and yeah, I mean, I would do some other SEC stories, but Georgia, I want to say all 3 years, Georgia was the second day. So I would get in maybe late the first day, really didn't care about the first day. And then it would usually be like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I would say by Thursday, you're just done. Done. Especially when I want to say you've got Ole Miss going, and it was Hugh Freeze. He's filibustering. The only media covering Ole Miss is just a bunch of fanboys who worship the ground that the head coach walks on. There was one guy, Ole Miss credentialed reporter wearing an Ole Miss shirt, clipping his fingernails next to me and I can't remember who the other person was, like clipping his fingernails while Hugh Freeze is talking. And I was just like, get me out of here. I'm done with this. Like, why am I still here at this point?
I mean, I was definitely the media member that started to ask the goofy questions because I just didn't care about your depth at right guard. And I mean, so like it would be, I remember asking one of the Auburn linemen what their order was at Waffle House. And that was kind of off the wall one. My favorite one, which it kind of got awkward because he didn't really get the joke that I was going for, but Bud Dupree from the state of Georgia played at Kentucky. And I just asked him, is there a more Kentucky name than Bud Dupree? And like, I thought it was a fantastic little joke. And he's just like, yeah, it's my name. So well, like with context, I got a decent story out of kind of like a off the wall question, but it needed the context to have it.
So Jason, is the Waffle House Georgia Tech coach Geoff Collins and the Ole Miss media, like which one are you like more, which one do you hate more between the two? I know he went on a rant on Collins.
Yeah, the Geoff Collins rant. That was good.
That was one of the greatest things I've ever had.
Probably Collins. I mean, Ole Miss media. I don't think twice about them, but like Collins, when he would get, when he was coaching there, it was just one thing after the other that made me laugh every day. So he gave me more entertainment from a comedic standpoint than I don't know, the Ole Miss media. I mean, I don't read anything the Ole Miss reporters write, say, whatever. So no, I'm not trying to like kill them or anything. I'm not trying to be rude, but I just don't think it's not a team. Georgia doesn't play them often, so it's not anything that I have to really concern myself with. It's really just that one guy, just that one guy clipping his nails, man. That was so gross and so weird. Just that is SEC media days in a nutshell. They credential everybody. You just get some absolute weirdos coming through and some just really weird questions. Not like the funny Dayne type of questions, but just really stupid stuff that's just off the wall that you're just like, come on, let's keep this moving. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, that's the one thing about media is I'm confused about. Sometimes you'll see a random Georgia safety and he's on like radio for like a Kentucky show, and the guy's like, all right, what am I supposed to ask here? I'm a Kentucky guy. Like you just kind of get the feeling if you need material and the material just doesn't connect. Like that's the hard part. But also I think for media days, last year was the best because the Saban Jimbo stuff was fantastic.
Right.
So unless there's something like that, it's not as newsworthy. So I think they should push a lot of the better teams or the bigger brand teams to like the third and fourth day, just so it's like, okay, it starts off and then it just ends great. So people are sitting there just anticipating, Brian Kelly's going to get up there and say something cringe for LSU on day 3 or day 4. And, you have Alabama and Georgia going each one of those days. Like that would be a better setup than, okay, we had to load up Ole Miss and Vanderbilt on day 4, I
mean, I do think they tried to split up the sound bites because we'd always look, where's Les Miles? What day is he? Brett Bielema had a bit of that status. Back in the day, Spurrier obviously had that. And it seems like they tried to put those on opposite days because they knew that they would kind of come with some personality. And a lot of coaches don't. I remember, I think it may have been Gus Malzahn. There was one of the coaches that literally did an opening statement in the main room for like 19 minutes, answered one question, and they were out.
I think it was Gus. I think you're right. I think it was Gus.
Usually they go through the entire depth chart and just give you like something on the backup punter.
Yeah, I want to say Kirby did that his second year, and he went really long, like 15 minutes or so, and then kind of smiled after that.
Yeah.
And but then I feel like since he's been pretty good about, hey, here's my opening statement. You can ask questions. Like Les Miles has done that. There's an art to the filibuster. I remember Les Miles doing it. Gus, I feel like I was there for the Gus one, man. and Hugh Freeze did it too. Hugh Freeze went really long, but he was never going to get. I'm going back to the Ole Miss media thing now. He was not going to get any hard questions. I don't know how Lane Kiffin is there with that, but yeah.
Dude, I'm gonna miss Mike Leach. Like now that, when Dayne was bringing up his questions, it's like Dane's the reporter that's built for a Mike Leach, where you could just say something to him.
Oh man,
and then he'll just go on a whole you can get 10 minutes just out of like the most bizarre question to Mike.
But like
he'll go on and it'll make mainstream headlines.
Yeah, but like Mike Leach will take it and run with it and have fun with it. Like I feel like there's a lot of players and coaches who don't take that or just feel like that's beneath them to have fun with that sort of stuff.
Like Eli Drinkowitz.
Yeah, they just take themselves
I don't
seriously.
know what it is about that guy, Jason, but I'm kind of like with you with Collins. I just cannot stand Eli Drinkowitz. I don't know if he has a punchable face or something. I don't know what it is.
We're talking about assault now.
Oh, my bad. But it's just something about Drinkowitz. It's like this guy is just not likable at all.
You want to worry
his
about him
NIL
for
comments,
much longer.
Like his NIL comments about doctors and all that stuff. I'm like, dude contradicting himself like 3 times and is like trying to make his point.
Yeah,
dude, this guy's a buffoon.
Yeah, well, the point is he can't compete NIL, so he doesn't want it. That's literally the point.
Hey, let's bring in friend of the show, Eddie from Ackworth, fresh off of a fun appearance with Bill Shanks for a long time on the show the other day. I listened to some of that, Eddie. Good job on there. Yeah, man.
That was fun. That was a fun little back and forth there. I appreciate that. So, can I make 2 observations before we get going? And I want to contribute my 3 players. First is Ben Bachmann. The background's different because you don't have your UGA sports thing. Little glimpse there into wood paneling in the basement. That's pretty awesome. Throwback to the 70s is what it looks like.
Oh yeah, I'm in my parents' house. My grandfather, who I was named after, built this entire house.
That's so cool. I love
this is Baltimore Colts.
I was going to say, I see the Baltimore Colts helmet. Yeah.
This is Baltimore Colts. Yeah, this is Cal Ripken.
Wait. How are you saying that?
Saying what?
Baltimore.
It
sounded like you were saying Baltimore.
No, I don't have. I'm not one of those people with an accent. my parents have accents. I always get on about milk and milk.
I feel like that was really close. I was really close to Baltimore.
That's really cool, really cool. Yeah. And the second thing is, Jason, you won apparently the thing we did last week on the votes, right?
Did I actually win?
That's what I heard through the grapevine.
Oh man, I guess I didn't pay enough attention. I thought I don't know. I thought it was you that won for some reason. I guess this was kind of left. Paul was definitely last. I mean,
that's all I said mattered. Paul came in last.
Paul
and he
told
cheated
me
with the Bobo pick. He cheated with that pick.
Paul told me that you won, Jason, and so I would normally say congratulations, but I'm going to protest and say that the vote was stacked, and I'm going to be protesting at UGA Sports with a big shaman hat, and we're gonna go down there and protest. Stop the steal, baby! You stole.
Wow. Okay. We're going there.
There's a no politics rule, Eddie. You know that. You may get sent to Chile after this.
Go on, dog.
That was really fun.
He's lucky Dash isn't here, else that'd be a perma ban.
No, it was really fun. So I logged on a little bit late. I'm sure the consensus is Cedric Van Pran's going to be one of those 3 guys, right? Yeah. I mean, I had him written down first. That's easy. I'll go through my second and third if you'll allow me. I thought Zion Logue would be a good one to have on there for the defensive line. I think he's very well spoken, what I've seen. And I'm with you on the Brock Bowers thing, except I don't think I love Brock Bowers. Don't get this wrong, but I think there's some guys who are just not acclimated and do well in speaking to the media. And Brock Bowers, I don't know. He just doesn't. He's just kind of one-line answer, and that's not what people are looking for. I put down Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint. I think that guy is a team before me all the way, and I just think he's very well spoken, been there, done all the battles. I just think that he's going to put him in front of Brock Bowers. But I get what you said, Jason. How do you not put Brock Bowers there, being literally one of the best players in the country?
Only reason I would not have Rosemary Jack Saint is because after the reckless driving arrest, like the team is going to be asked about it anyway. So you're not going to have one of those guys there.
But didn't Pilar get into something?
Yeah, but I mean that was over a year ago, and I think it was
really small though. But
smaller.
Because Nolan Smith had like the most minor thing. He like drove in a construction zone and then he was there. So
and we say that about Van Pran. I mean, Van Pran was around the wreck in January. Yes. So like we know he will also be asked about that as well. It's just I think he's answered enough about it at this point. He probably knows the answer to give.
I didn't even think about that. That's a good point though, Dayne. Yeah.
Dayne, who might be the most underrated Georgia guy when it comes to media was Channing Tindall. Channing Tindall was fantastic with the media. Like, I don't know. He was definitely on that championship team. He might have been first or second with the media, which I don't know. I just randomly picked that up because I remember when I interviewed Jalen Walker, I was like, dude, they're the same person. So that's why Walker like Jalen Walker. Yeah, he is. That's why I'm like next year he'll be on the media days. There's no doubt.
Jordan Hall's a guy that will get up there one day. He's a freshman, so obviously not.
And just badmouth Florida.
Yeah, he'll do some of that. Certain guys just want to talk about like. I think it was Jake Camarda that we talked to, and like he was kind of bad about talking about football. But if you let him talk about golf, it was fantastic. Like he needs a golf podcast. And so like once you can figure out what the guys are genuinely interested in telling you about, like I try to ask them things that aren't football a lot of times because like, you're going to get better answers.
Well, I think you can get some good stories, especially if you're trying to find an angle for a feature. Not to go journalism one-on-one here, but Jake Fromm was obviously not a great football interview. I think we can agree to that. But I remember when I did a big feature on him as a recruit after he flipped to Georgia, I just went down and talked to him about hunting and fishing and all that stuff. And man, this guy was as detailed and as focused, and you could just tell that was really where his passion was, more so than football. And so there are a lot of guys where if you could find that topic, you can't get them to shut up. But then when it's football,
the same.
Right.
Well, I'll say this from a fan perspective. You guys do all the interviews. That, to me, is the most fascinating thing when you guys go off the subject of football and veer into, like you said, hunting with Jake Fromm or whatever. What makes these guys – what pushes their buttons outside of football? That, to me, is the most interesting thing because we're learning more about them as a person, right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest mistakes I think that media makes is thinking that these guys know all the history of UGA, like the media that covers UGA or the fans do. Because like every year it's like, well, this is a rivalry game. What do you think this means? They're going to give you a canned answer about how it's important. And this this is a big thing for Georgia. There are so many players on this team that had never watched a Georgia football game before they got on the team. That happens. And they usually are NFL fans before they're college fans. Now, is that changing some now with Georgia's success? Probably. I mean, Georgia's on more of the big stages. But as a whole, I think you end up having players that's just like, I'm going to Georgia because they can get me into the league. There are a few that go to Georgia because they just are passionate about Georgia, and that's a life goal. But for the most part, it's what can Georgia do for me?
I think that is actually the minority of it. I think it's very much what can they do for me to get to the league, and how do I get along with its coaching staff? They learn about the history once they're there. They learn about the rivalry. They really don't know much about the rivalries until year one. And then they're like, oh, okay, we hate Florida. We hate Georgia Tech. And then, of course, the Tennessee Auburn and that stuff kind of falls in after that. But, I remember learning this pretty young when I was coming up through the university and interviewing these guys. And I remember having the same thing. Like, how do these guys not know or feel the same way? It's just a different way to look at it. It is not, I am a big diehard fan. It is, I'm really good at football and Georgia gives me the best opportunity to take it to the next level.
I've met a couple guys that are big fans of Javon Bullard loves Georgia. It was his life goal to get there.
Right.
Now, I was going to say the two reasons why you asked those off-wall questions are personality and comfort. When you talk to a guy in an interview and he goes, oh, he's just asking me about this. This is a casual conversation. It doesn't even feel like an interview. It just feels like a conversation. That's why like podcasts and stuff like that's getting big. It feels like more people having a conversation that you're enjoying versus more of like a job interview, which it's like, we know you're just going to say good things because you want to get the job, So I think right there, you're trying to get comfort with him because then he's loose and then you can get his personality.
I've also seen you guys like ask players about other players and they light up more so about those other players than they do about themselves, and I find that interesting.
Yeah, I think people like to talk about others over themselves just for the
Some
human
do.
factor, and it's some want all this shine in the spotlight, but man, a lot of them, especially position groups, just look out for each other, like the brotherhood thing. Sorry, Jason, Falcons.
It's okay. Yeah, PTSD.
Like that's a real deal. But hey, I wanted to move on to our next topic we wanted to get to, because Ben, you wrote an article for UGA Sports yesterday about Georgia filling out its baseball coaching staff.
Yeah.
And you had a pretty good thought of kind of the I guess the meta version of what this means for Georgia athletics, not necessarily this particular hire, but as Georgia has transitioned a lot in recent years in some of the sports that aren't football, what does that mean for the athletic department?
Yeah, because like the one thing I noticed is, a lot of people always think, okay, Georgia's a football school, go on all in on football. Every program goes all in most heavily on football because you have to. It requires more to make those facilities. The stadiums are bigger. It's the biggest revenue maker. So go all in on football. Thing is, I've noticed LSU is top 10 in football in the country. They just won in women's basketball. They won in baseball. They've been to the tournament in men's basketball. Most of these schools now are multi-sport schools. So what does that say for Georgia? Because baseball this year, they didn't even make a regional. And then basketball, obviously Mike White, but there's new coaches coming in there. So I'm wondering from the athletic department's, standpoint, Alabama used to be the same way. Now they're good at basketball. Baseball, they hosted a regional. So now we're starting to see even the teams that went all in on football getting better in the other areas of sports. Does Georgia get more aggressive now in those other sports? Does Georgia say, with Mike White, we're going to go all in? There's apparently 5-star basketball recruits that are really interested in him. Baseball, you just took the pitching coach who has MLB experience and was at LSU, just won the title. Are they now going to get aggressive? And how does that change the landscape of everything? Because now are they going to be that multi-sport school, or should they just stick to this aggressive football model only and just ride it out for as long as they can? Because I think at some point they have to spread out to other sports. They just have to.
Well, Eddie, what's your perception?
Did you say me? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, Eddie, what's your perception as a fan? I'm curious.
Well, I just can't get past the fact that I heard, and the name escapes me, I'm sorry, but a guy that covered LSU, and he was interviewed on local Atlanta radio when Wes Freeman was announced as the hire. And this is what he said. He said, and I'm not knocking Sinclair or anything like that by saying this, but he said, with this hire, Georgia is finally serious about their baseball program. And he covers LSU, and he knows that program backwards and forwards. And that really, when I heard that, I kind of was like, whoa, that's really good to hear. This guy is a legit SEC coach, much like Mike White. Everybody was like, oh, Mike White from Florida. Why is he doing that? SEC. He's been in the SEC. And Mike White, I think, is doing some great things in the basketball program that we haven't seen. And, guys, this transfer portal works absolutely great in Georgia's favor, because the basketball and baseball programs have been behind the 8 ball for a long time now, and they can quickly change things, turn things around. I think Mike White's doing that, and I think Freeman is the answer here, because our problem this year was pitching. I'm sorry, I read Freeman. Wes Johnson is the answer because of the pitching coach.
Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the why isn't Georgia good at basketball? Why haven't they really committed? And I think, to me, better facilities. And I still stand behind that they got to do something about Stegman. But I'm with Eddie. Mike White has shown a more like a capability, a commitment to recruiting, somebody who's actually doing it to at a much better efficiency, I guess is maybe a better word. I mean, on paper, I thought Tom Crean should have done well at Georgia. I mean,
on paper,
at least for what Georgia was, Georgia's been so down for so long, yet is so close to so much talent, and they could never land under Mark Fox. He just was not a good recruiter at all. And it just seemed like Tom Crean, I mean, all right, Indiana, he could get him to the tournament, and he could get him to a Sweet 16, and Indiana hated the fact that they couldn't get any further than that. And it just seemed like, okay, well, at least at Georgia, he can get them to the tournament, and then all you need is one run and just get lucky once, and then things can fall from there. And the guy was a total disaster and an absolute cultural misfit to this program. And with Mike White, I think you're seeing somebody who he's not regarded, I think, as like the best at anything, but he does a lot of good things, or does a lot of things well. And you're seeing that with recruiting. I think you saw that when it came to some of the, especially earlier in the season, you saw some improvements. I mean, they looked much better just from a team perspective on both sides of the ball than the Crean years. And he really hasn't been working with much. And so you like it, but I still think that, and I think Josh Brooks has the right idea. I think his vision for what Georgia is and needs to be, you're seeing that with these two coaching hires, with the tennis facility getting upgraded. They've got to continue to be more thinking on the forefront. The fact that they lost, the tennis tournament to Orlando in the UCF facility should have never happened. And I know that happened under Greg McGarity when that first happened. And I just feel good about the direction Josh Brooks has for these other sports. But I still think that Stegman, something's got to happen there for basketball to really take that next step. They probably can't justify it until they put together a tournament type season, though. But that, to me, I think will propel them to that next level once they can address those basketball facilities.
And I'm not ruling that out happening next year, by the way, with basketball. I'm not at all. And also, I'll say a quick thing here. So I forget his brother's first name, but Austin Knoll is the 5-star recruit who was born in Athens, whose brother's a walk-on, who's on the team right now. When he says, I'm being recruited by harder than anybody else in Georgia, and then you hear stories about how Nick Claxton never even heard from the head coach when he signed with Georgia, which is embarrassing to think about. And now you have Austin Knoll, who's a 5-star, who's saying, who's from out of state right now, saying they talk to me almost every day. That's night and day to me, because previously they had 2 coaches who signed multiple players who they never talked to. Well, I guarantee a part of them didn't even know. They just said, our assistants, all right, let's go up and down the board. Like, I know a lot of the assistant coaches with receivers, Ryan McClendon, like certain receivers that Cortez Hankton didn't, and vice versa. So obviously his assistants would do a lot of the recruiting work, and they also hired lazy assistants too. But now you need a head coach who's an alpha. When Jay Johnson is the head coach at LSU for baseball, he's going out and he's talking to every transfer, every high school kid. Scott Strickland heard so many stories for baseball, how he didn't even talk to anybody. Like, there were kids. I heard a story. I'm not going to name the person, but a former all SEC closer said, I wouldn't piss on that man if he was on fire. Like, as a story, because he had 60. So this is the quick story. He threw 60 bullpen pitches before going to a game. Anybody who knows baseball knows that makes no sense. You don't wear a guy's arm out before you put him in a game. That's stupidity. And now they're saying, you know what? We're going to get the best pitching coach in the country. We're going to put him around a bunch of assistants. He'll take the pitching, put him around assistants that will recruit and get hitting. He hired a guy who was a scout in the MLB and was a championship JUCO coach. Hired one of the best hitting coaches in the SEC from Kentucky, who also worked at Mississippi State. And then one of the most likable guys at Georgia, he brought him back to keep the roster intact, so he didn't lose any key pieces. That's huge. And then when you look at Eric Pastrana and the assistants that are on Mike White's staff, every single one of those guys is recruiting every single guy in the transfer portal. Every guy who signed with Georgia, they follow every transfer portal guy on Twitter. All the assistants do. Mike White, all those talks with, they might sign 2 5-star recruits for the first time ever in the history of the program in one class. They've only signed 2 ever that played at Georgia. They might sign 2 in the same class this year. And I think that with the way Tennessee is competitive in 3 sports, Alabama's competitive in 3 to 4 of the top sports, same with LSU, and every team in the SEC is competitive. Vandy's decent in basketball and great in baseball. Georgia has to adapt, and I don't even think that takes away from football. So I think that a massive change is going to happen to Georgia in the next couple of years, which is going to be exciting because, to be honest, after fall's over, outside of recruiting, our coverage kind of stumps down a ton because there isn't much to talk about. I think that's going to change the next few years.
And that's
I can
Go ahead, Eddie.
solve the Stegman Coliseum thing right now. It's very easy, Josh Brooks. You cut down the cages and allow the motorcycle riders to ride over Stegman after every win. It's that easy. You don't know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. There's one other issue. I will tell people that we did talk to Josh Brooks on this YouTube channel. Coach Donovan and I did just to get a facilities update on a lot of things. So that's here. It's about 2 weeks ago that was published. And one of the things that's happening that I think is long overdue, they're going to paint the top of Stegman that kind of looks like that spider's web of concrete.
Right.
They're going to paint that black, which is going to be slightly more intimidating and just better looking to the eye. That's like the cheapest fix that you can do, but they should have done that 30 years ago. So that's cool. Mm-hmm. But if you go to the underbelly of Stegman, like where the locker rooms are, I've done some public address announcing in there. In like the men's restroom, it's still the urinal trough. Yes, as long as that's the case, I can't tell you that Stegman is like a serious facility.
It's not. It's not.
So
I mean, they have a lot of space on Millage, South Millage. Build Ole Miss type arena out there. Ole Miss has. God, I brought up Ole Miss way too much today. They have the best.
That's your second school now.
I know, apparently. No, but this is actually a positive thing. They have the best basketball arena in the SEC, hands down. It is.
So they still have the communal trough, and they have the communal washing station where you push your foot down, and you do. Everybody does that.
And Stegman,
that's still there.
It's ridiculous. Yep. Yeah. So, but yeah. I mean, the Ole Miss gym, phenomenal, and go build that on South Millage. I mean, I know they don't want to move it that far away from campus, but I mean, come on, like if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do.
The arena should be downtown. And
I mean, I get it, but where would you put it?
I mean, the Classic Center is building an arena right now for a semi-pro hockey team. If the city and the university could find a way to actually talk to each other, then maybe that's a way they could have like a multi-purpose. I know, like that's something that's way bigger than any of us can handle.
Yeah.
But like that's one of those things that like that'd be so much fun to be go downtown, and then there's the basketball arena right there. I did want to add though, Ben, that. And Jason, you touched on some of this. A lot of the sports that are a little bit even lower revenue, maybe the Olympic sports, Georgia, I think, has done very well recently. Men and women's tennis has jumped up even more, and historically they've been great. Ethan Quinn, following him this year, was fantastic, and seeing him in the U.S. Open is going to be really cool. He was so good that he's not coming back because he's a professional tennis player now. Gymnastics, I think, had a really good recruiting class, so they dipped from where they were in the Jocelyn days, but it seems like there's at least some hope there. Mm-hmm. So I see in other sports some hope. I do think baseball is a long way to go, but maybe they can write that pretty quickly. I think they got the right coach, though.
I do. Well, you were talking about Stegman, Jason. I mean, Foley Field is probably one of the worst in the SEC, too. Like, if you see like you talking about the Mississippi schools, weirdest thing about the Mississippi schools, for the most part, they suck at everything. They're like they're awful, but their stadiums, like especially like baseball, basketball, are so nice, yet they're garbage, like as a team. So like they don't deserve it. Like I think even Georgia's put up. I know that they won a championship. I think both in baseball had like a Cinderella run the 2 previous years. But outside of that, they don't win championships in anything. And they have these nice arenas and ballparks. And it's like Georgia could easily have far better than that. They could.
And there's no excuse for Georgia at this point not to be like Alabama is with the other sports. Really basketball. I mean, the fact that Alabama's become a really good basketball program.
Auburn, too.
Auburn, yeah. There's no excuse for Georgia. Tennessee, too. I mean
South Carolina made a Final Four.
Yeah, I know. I mean, really, you look. I don't want to. I mean, yeah, we'll do it because I don't really care. Mark Fox. I mean, Mark. Hanging on to Mark Fox as long as they did.
God, here we go.
Hanging on to Scott Strickland. If he didn't have that one run, after year 5, the worst thing that ever happened to Georgia baseball was making it to the playoffs after its first 5 years or 4 years of below mediocrity and pretty.
I'd argue
bad.
the COVID year was the worst thing that happened because I think that team because it had 2 MLB pitchers.
They had 2 first-round pitchers.
Yeah,
we were going to debut pretty soon in the big leagues.
Yeah, but they still didn't. They didn't. They never made it.
Yeah,
he never because I can't remember what year that was. Was it 17 or 18? Where they had everything to get to the College World Series, and then lost to Duke, and they could not. Yeah, he could not get them to where they needed to be. And then, I mean, I to this day, I do not understand why Fox stayed around. And it's just silly. It's madness. I mean, it's both those things. It's like,
but it went so well at Cal for him.
Which shocker. I know. I can't believe it. But I mean,
man,
he made the tournament in year 2 with Felton's players, and then he made it one more time and like barely got in that time. And the recruiting was outside of Contavious Caldwell Pope. I mean, the recruiting was never there, and he would always point to Yante and JJ, and it was like, well, he got lucky with JJ. That JJ turned out to be a really good college player at 5'8" or whatever he was. And Yante being overlooked until the end. Otherwise, he didn't bring in anybody, and that could take the program to the next level. I'm not trying to dog these guys, but it's just the reality when you compare teams to teams. And that really set the program so far back. Because I remember people that did harp on Tom Crean's first year. And it was like, I don't think they understood that once JJ and Yante were gone, there was nobody coming in to replace that kind of production. Nick Claxton, I guess, but Fox lied to Nick Claxton, from my understanding. He said he was going to put him on the wing, and that first year he was 8 minutes, 10 minutes a game down low. It's just insanity that he stayed there so long. That's as close to a Jeff Collins style rant you're going to get out of me tonight. But this time on
because Auburn's one of Georgia's biggest rivals, and how they all of a sudden are just they're a basketball school now, which is funny to me because I think in football I understand Hugh Freeze can have fun, his style of fun at Auburn. I guess that's what they're known for. But I don't think they're going to be big time successful. They've turned into a basketball school. They have, and the funny part is Jabari Smith, Walker Kessler, and all those guys, they're all from Georgia. Every single guy on that starting line. Katie Johnson was one of their top 4 players. He was at Georgia. He transferred there.
Yeah.
Got worse there because obviously he went from being the number 1 to being the number 4 or 5. That was a big part of it. But their entire roster is on Georgia guys. If you lock down the state of Georgia in baseball and basketball, you're a top 10 program.
And it's no excuse at this point. You lock
down your state. Georgia is one of the 3 to 4 most talent-rich states in the country, and its booster base is top 5, 6 in the country. If you invest, you're a top 5 to 6 program, or at least top 10 in every sport if you invest correctly. I just think it's plain and simple. There's so many teams in almost every sport. Ty Floyd, so I remember it was College World Series, the game 2 or game 1. Both starting pitchers were from Georgia. They're both going to be drafted in the first round or 2 of the draft. I know that's my point. The Georgia guys litter everywhere.
The good news for Georgia baseball guys is the last time Georgia hired an assistant coming off a national championship run at the previous team, it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Right?
Jason, I do want to staple one observation to your Mark Fox rant, and it is about a specific player. As much of Georgia basketball of that era that I watched, I swear to you that John Florvius never touched a basketball. He was there and he was moving and his arms were flailing and he was making motions, but I don't think his hands ever actually touched the ball.
I mean, it's a pretty good observation. That's the case. They had some guys, man. Who was it? It was Kessler's older brother, Houston Kessler.
Kessler.
Man, he was
that's an awful look.
Nice guy.
Nimi Jurisic, that was a fun one.
So you get his brother and you can't get him because they didn't recruit his brother?
No, they recruited his brother, but somehow, some way, Mark Fox
Tom Crean's the coach. Was he recruited?
No, well, Fox was trying to recruit him, and Fox left. Yeah, Crean was not. I mean, at this point, Crean shouldn't be coaching anybody because he thinks it's still.
Wait a minute. Was Kessler after Anthony Edwards?
Yeah.
So it was Tom Crean.
Early.
He wasn't recruited. That's also the funny story was Anthony Edwards, who loves Georgia, goes, I'll be honest, I wasn't recruited hard by them, but I didn't want to go to the Blue Bloods. They had everybody. And Florida State, I went on the visit and hated it. So I went to Georgia, even though I've always loved Georgia and been a diehard football fan. He even admitted basically, like, I kind of just said, screw it at this point. I'm going there. That's kind of, and he's a guy he follows the football team. He hypes up Kirby. And also from everyone I've heard in like the athletics department that were either players or just from people we've all talked to, he's one of the nicest human beings. They said Anthony Edwards is a nice dude.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, to not recruit so many people if they get the top player from Georgia every year, Jaylen Brown, Scoot Henderson was like the number 2 or 3 pick this year. There's like a top 3 or 4 draft pick from Georgia every year in basketball. If you have a one and done dude and build just a decent team around him, you're a deep tournament team. And the funny thing is, someone said on UGA Sports, Mike White might be the what's his name, Mark Richt of basketball. Georgia fans would love Mark Richt of basketball because you'd be top 10. You might not win in the tournament because it's hard. John Calipari's a joke in the tournament, and they're a top 5 team. If they go fun, if they have fun tournament runs, even into the Elite Eight, teams will love it because it's so hard to win.
Well, you could also argue
6 championships in 40 years. Siemens won 6 in 15. It's harder in basketball, but as long as you have a team that's making runs and making it consistently with some fun players, it's all you want. You're not going to win as consistently because of the nature of 64-team tournament. So Mark Richt in basketball is perfect for Georgia. So I don't understand that at all. For football, you need to get over that hump. For football, it's a little bit different. And for most other programs, Mark Richt would be a fantastic coach for most other programs. Texas A&M would love Mark Richt over Jimbo Fisher. But for Georgia basketball, A+ to have a Mark Richt of basketball.
Well, and Ben, you brought up Ant-Man, and when he signed with Georgia, I was like, here we go. Here's the great recruit we've been waiting for. We're going to get a bounce out of this. I guarantee you asked, I don't know, 80% of NBA fans, where did Anthony Edwards go to college? They probably wouldn't even know. Yeah, because it was just there. You know, he really, and I'm not knocking Anthony Edwards. He's a great player, but we got nothing out of that. Absolutely nothing. He was just there and gone, and there was zero bounce out of it. It was pathetic, in my opinion. And that's what we've been waiting for that type of player to show up in Athens, right?
I mean, Georgia may be the worst.
Wilkins.
Georgia may be the worst program to have 3 NBA players right now.
Yeah, and they're all good.
They're all pretty good.
Yeah. Every single one of them. I think there's this thing though that if you go through Tom Crean and you go through Mark Fox and you get to the NBA, you have to be a good player because if you have that coaching, you're going to be better. Like Anthony Edwards goes, the Timberwolves are the worst organization I believe in the history of the NBA, like wins wise. He takes them to the playoffs in like year 1 or year 2 because he's that good. And he actually has somewhat decent players around him. Where he's at Georgia, everyone's small and can't shoot. So you have a small team and you can't shoot. They never have a big man. Like the teams that Mark Fox and Tom Crean assembled made no sense because you had no center and you had nobody who could shoot. So the two things, you either have shooting, like you're like the Golden State Warriors, or you have a dominant big like a bunch of team in college. You had neither of that. That makes no sense. How do you construct a roster like that?
So, you can't recruit. That's the problem.
Well, you can't recruit. So we're going to take all guys who play small forward and a bunch of point guards who can't score. All right, this might work.
That was Fox's strategy. Just a bunch of threes. They couldn't shoot threes. They couldn't.
You can't shoot, and you can't get any rebounds. Yeah. What are you supposed to do?
No,
I'm eager for some baseball coach to say they're playing positionless baseball. I'm like, no, doesn't work that way.
No,
we're gonna put a bunch of catchers in the center field. Yeah, that's gonna work. We recruit a bunch of catchers. They can catch a ball, so we'll put them in center, even though they can't run to it.
Brandon on YouTube says stick to football, to which I say, but you're kind of lucky, Brandon, because that was the next topic we we're going to hit was the spot on Georgia's football depth chart, position groups. We'll go with that position group that you feel the best about with Georgia, and the position group that if there's one to worry about, that's the one that would cause you some concern heading into the season. This is a topic we talked about on UGA Sports Live as we've been going through the position groups each week. So I'll start this and then pass it around to y'all. Defensive line, it took us 20 minutes to go through Georgia's defensive line just for the depth and everything that's there. And if you combine it into front seven with linebackers behind it, I think Georgia's defensive front is still going to be really good. If I have an area of concern beyond quarterback, because I kind of exempted that conversation, we'll have it a ton. To me, it is tackle on offense. If you have one injury, tackle or center, I just don't see the experience depth behind the tackle center combination. And I'm just saying, if a tackle and Cedric Van Pran gets hurt, Austin Blasky goes to center, you're playing someone at tackle that hasn't really played. And that would be worrisome to me.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I feel like offensive line, when you look at it, it's a pretty deep group that you feel good about. And I think a lot of the reason I'm actually going to go with the offensive line, I'm going to disagree vehemently with you, Dayne.
Well, wait,
vehemently.
He said a specific, but Dayne said a specific position. You're talking about.
I thought he said position group.
That's what I thought.
So I say offensive line because they all cross train. I mean, like the fact that Blasky is tackle and center, or you could probably move. Ernest Green, if you needed to. I mean, he could play guard. Micah
I'm not
Morris.
worried about guard at all. I think
nobody's worried about guard.
No.
I think that tackle's fine. I think when you look at the fact that they go pretty much 3 deep at offensive line. I don't think that because there hasn't been a tackle. I'll cut myself off there. I trust this coaching staff with offensive line way more than maybe I did in the beginning because of what we saw in the Rick years, where we talked about this last week. You had an offensive lineman go down, and then you had a second one go down. The entire line's reshuffled, and they were screwed. And that happened almost every year. If you have a couple injuries on the offensive line with this group, you are fine. I think they are just as in a good position as the defensive line is, as you mentioned, with depth. Sure, the game experience might not be there, but the way they've recruited, I really don't have an issue with the offensive line.
I guess in my scenario, I'm just saying, are you confident in either? Because I think these would be in the running for that kind of spot behind there. If two players that play tackle get hurt among the 3 of Mims, Blasky, Green, or even if one of those is Van Pran and Blasky has to go to center, are you fine with one of your tackles being Xavier Truss? We've seen him out at tackle.
Sure.
Or are you fine with that being Monroe Freeling, who's a true freshman?
Monroe Freeling, sure. I mean, I think you've heard good reports about him. I think at some point he's going to have to play, whether he's a true freshman or not.
Fair.
I mean, I'm just not concerned with offensive line. That's they have done the part. They have done what they set out to do from the beginning, and they've built a really good group in terms of this just across the board offensive linemen, and they cross-train these guys so that in worst-case scenarios, they can move over and play a different position if needed.
All right, your area of concern?
Kicker. Absolutely. Yeah. That is the one position. When you change a kicker, especially somebody like Hot Pod has been pretty consistent. No. I mean,
he's as good as any kicker they've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a Zirkle or the freshman. Don't know. I'm concerned.
I'm shocked Zirkle's still here. That name just brings me flashbacks of, man, they're taking a kicker and they're going to take another scholarship kicker. Oh, yeah, that guy's still on the roster. But I would agree with kicker, but to go with bad for good, I'll go inside linebacker because I think you have 3 dudes there who are all good. I trust Jalen Walker. I've been hyping him up all show. He's the first Georgia commit I ever interviewed, and his game tape, especially the TCU games, season went on. He made bigger play after bigger play. He's your 3rd guy. You have Dumas Johnson and you have Smail London. That's the best inside linebacking core, I think, in the country by far. So I'll take that. I have my faith in Glenn Schumann. He was the first pick in my draft last week. I have faith in him. Then you know what? I'll actually go just to go away from special teams and individual players. The one unit I'm a little bit on is running back because Kendall Milton hasn't proven to be. This is why I say this. Kendall Milton hasn't proven to be healthy. Branson Robinson's coming off that foot issue, so we don't know if he's going to be healthy at week 1. He's going to miss the entire fall. I mean, he's going to miss the entire summer camp. Then you have Edwards. Then you have Robinson's a freshman. Andrew Paul's coming off a torn ACL. I don't know if it's been cleared yet.
No, don't move on. Say his name.
Cash Jones.
Thank you, sir.
There you go. Cash Jones. He's the guy. So actually, that might change my pick to them being the strength. Now that I remember he's still alive. And Lynette Whitehead, what a transfer. But I think that there's so much injury concern there. You talk about injury concern with offensive line. None of those guys are hurt. All these running backs are either hurt or have a history of being hurt, or they're freshmen. So that's why I'm it gives me some concern. I always know they're going to run the ball well, but as a unit, you don't know who's going to be the running back what week given their history of these guys.
Eddie?
Yeah, Jason took mine. I did the position, like you said, position group. I said special teams, which is a stretch, but I was really narrowing that down to the kicker. Peyton Woodring. We don't know what we're getting with him. I think Brett Thorson is going to be awesome. I mean, he proved that last year. But, yeah, you just going from Podlinski to this, you just don't know. So, but I'm with you a little bit, Ben. I thought about the running back position as a weakness, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I'm with you on the Kendall Milton, just can't seem to stay healthy type of thing. But everybody seems to just kind of gloss over Dajon Edwards. That guy's a beast. I mean, he's just always there. He's always healthy, and he hammers people in that fourth quarter. And you get Branson Robinson back healthy, and I'm telling you, Roderick Robinson's the one to watch at running back. I think that kid's going to be something special. So that's why I didn't pick them. The strength, I'm going to go with the wide receiver group. I'm going to say it right now. I think this is the best wide receiver group Georgia has ever had in the history of the program. I'm sorry, Dom, Ladd. I'm going to include the tight ends in that. They're catching passes, so they're part of the wide receiver group. Everybody talks about all these Marcus Rosemy-Jackson. Nobody talks about Arian Smith. That guy's coming back. That guy's unbelievable at wide receiver. They're awesome.
Do they do any of them get 1,000 yards?
No. I don't think so. But
they don't have to.
But who cares? Who cares?
They don't have to.
Well,
they don't have to. Because Ladd McConkey still might be a second-round pick with like 700 yards. Think about it. Dominic Lovett was top 3 in the SEC. Now, I think he missed a game. He had 800 receiving yards. He was top 3 in the SEC. There was I think Jalen Hyatt was the only 1,000-yard receiver in the conference last year. And Tennessee just huck and chuck. That's their offense. They don't run the ball.
I say who cares, Jason, but the only thing I'll say with that is if one of the players cares that they're not getting, you know what I mean? I don't know about Dom and Rah-Rah. I think the other guys that are on the roster don't give a crap about how many they get.
I know if any of them do care, they're not going to play. I can tell you that.
Well, that's a good
You know what I mean? If Kirby catches wind that these guys care more about their individual stats, they're not going to play.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps that the most productive ones returning are Bowers and McConkey, and they're just going to do the team thing.
Wait, Dane, which one did you say was your strength?
Strength for me was just defensive line, but I kind of included that into front. It just, man, when you start going down the names of to get through the season, Georgia is better equipped at defensive line to weather any injuries or just have fresh guys that can rotate in and out. And I know that stuff with Jalen Carter leaving, he was so disruptive. They don't have that. I'm not saying they do, but just in terms of volume of players that can be competitive in the SEC, I really like Georgia's defensive line.
And the reps coming back. That floors me. The reps that these guys have in live time football. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I was going to go secondary, but I just think when you look at it as a whole for something that would be more of a negative, even though I think it's a strength, I don't think there are as many weaknesses on this team outside of quarterback because your quarterback's never played. So I just think that's an easy one because it's one guy, most important position he hasn't played, but I'm not going to go there. But when you look at the secondary, you have 3 elite dudes coming back, and they're all going to be drafted high. Last year's a first-rounder. Starks will be a first-rounder next year when he's eligible. And Ballard is the anchor who has first-round film. The only knock on him is obviously going to be his size, and he's a nickel small safety. That might knock him in NFL evaluators' eyes into the second round, but I still think he could be a first-rounder in the later part if he tests well. So all 3 guys you have come back high draft picks. So I don't see the secondary really as a weakness. They're going to put 2 new guys in there, but they're both probably going to be damn good.
Hey, I want to wrap the show with this. It's really hot. I'm a meteorologist now. I'm telling you it's hot because it's triple digits and we're dealing with that across the South. Do you have any tips for staying warm? What's the thing, or staying cool? What's the thing that you do?
Staying warm.
What's the thing that you do that other people could learn from of, battling the heat wave that comes in the South this time of year, which I say the South, but I think it's up the Eastern Seaboard toward you guys too, Jason and Ben.
Yeah. You want to go first, Jason?
I don't really. I have been thinking about this because before Dane brought this up, and I don't know, man. Crank up the AC inside. Don't go outside. That's it. That's. I just become a vamp when it gets too cold or too hot. I just become a vampire. And
Stay away from the sun.
Yeah,
I hate sunburn. I remember my mother would always say if Ben broke his arm, he would enjoy that more than getting sunburned. Dude, I hate sunburn. So if I'm overheated, I'm just in shade. Can't be too overheated. Even though I still love the beach and all, just can't deal with sunburn.
Eddie, anything?
Stop being wussies. We live in the South. It's summer. It's hot. This is the lead up to football. Y'all are all invited. come sit in my pool. It's right back there, and watch the hottest team in baseball, the Atlanta Braves, kick everybody's ass in the MLB. That's how you deal with summer.
Eddie's pool. That's how you do it. The whole topic came up because I have a new beverage addiction that I just wanted to talk about because I'm now an evangelist for Topo Chico, the carbonated water.
Oh, okay.
It is so refreshing to me. It's replacing all of soda consumption in my world. And that's very much like a northern thing in America. Like if you go to New York City, they ask you like, do you want like tap water or sparkling water? And it always said tap, but like there's something about Topo Chico that has just hit for me, and it's distributed by Coca-Cola, so it's still Southern.
Actually,
I was going to say, Jason, Eddie Murray used to play for the Orioles, like the legend, because I was going to say he's the IPA, and since Eddie's on here, I was going to say
I have some of that downstairs.
The
I got some
IPA
of that IPA.
Yeah, just have a cold beer of Steady Eddies and just go out by the pool.
Yeah,
I was going to bring it up since he talked about the pool and having a nice beverage. So
one of these weeks, Paul's going to do the show from Eddie's pool.
Come on, it's open.
We should all. Come
Eddie,
down.
do you still owe him the steak? Does he owe you the steak or?
No, I owed him and I paid him off. We couldn't meet up, so I sent him a Grubhub. So I paid it off that way. We could not meet up.
I thought you had it, but I guarantee
it was like 0.5, literally.
Oh,
was
that's
like,
BS.
It was brutal.
Bad beat.
It should have been a split, but
I paid my debt, so he's good.
Well, that's going to wrap it here for the Sunday call-in show from UGAsports.com. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and go check out our work over at UGAsports.com. Always enjoy hanging out with you all. Hope you have a fantastic July 4th holiday. Celebrate with your family and friends. Get your Topo Chico. Avoid the sun, like Jason says. We can save fireworks as a topic for another time because since I have young children, I now hate fireworks, and all of my neighbors that shoot off fireworks, I also hate them too. So maybe they're listening and we'll have a fun conversation. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time here from UGAsports.com.